I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, we have sorely changed. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. That is what I heard them say way back in the day. I'll be buried in my grave before I become a slave, yeah, yeah. But it seems like since that day, we have sorely changed. Whoa. Hey, hey. Whoa, oh, 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 oh. Whoa, oh, 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 oh.
And now, live from beautiful Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, you're watching My Fellow Americans with your host, Spike Cohen.
Yes! Finally! Yes, finally. I know it's me. Thank you. Oh, keep clapping. Thank you. I survived COVID. I didn't die of COVID. Keep clapping if you're happy that I didn't die of COVID. Why are you all... I said keep clapping if you're happy I didn't die of COVID, and then you stopped clapping. Welcome to My Fellow Americans. I am literally Spike Cohen, and I appears have survived COVID, and I'm doing better every day. I'm sure that's true. This is a Muddy Waters Media production, first of 2022. We are already a 10th through this year. If you weren't already depressed before this show started, we're already 1/10 of the way through this year. Just 9 more tenths to go, and then it's off to 2023 and all the beauty that awaits there. This is a Muddy Waters Media production. Check us out everywhere. All social media platforms, all podcasting platforms. We are on all of them. Check us out on all of them. Follow us on all of them. Like us on all of them. Subscribe to us on all of them. Whatever you are listening or watching this on right now, if you haven't already, be sure to like us, subscribe to us, follow us, whatever the thing is. 5-star us. If there are stars you can give us all the stars. If it's 10, give us 10 stars. However many stars you can give us. And if this is on YouTube, hit the bell if you're on YouTube, because we want your phone, which I have down here on the floor. We want your phone to explode. My phone's dying. We want your phone to explode with notifications every single time we go live. So be sure to do that. And share this right now. The last thing that I want is for you and your closest loved ones to miss out on a roughly hour-long libertarian podcast on a Wednesday evening. I would hate that for you. Share the gift. Give the gift of Spike Cohen today. Kids love it. This episode. Oh, and of course, I keep forgetting to do this. Of course, be sure to subscribe to get access to exclusive Muddied Waters Media content, to get a discount at the Muddied Waters Media store, to get an ad-free experience for Muddied Waters Media on Spotify and Anchor, and also to have access to our monthly Muddied Zoom, which is a Zoom call with you and me and all the other Muddied Waters people, all the Muddied Waters contributors, and all of the Muddy Waters subscribers. Join today. I'm going to show it again. Join today. Become a member of the Muddied Muds. militia. We have to work on a name for that. Become a member today. And thank you so much. This episode, of course, is brought to you by the Libertarian Party Waffle House Caucus, the fastest growing and second largest caucus in the Libertarian Party. Join the takeover that is the Libertarian Party Waffle House Caucus by going to the Facebook group Libertarian Party Waffle House Caucus. Very conveniently named such. And if you would like to go and get gear, get moneyed exclusive Libertarian Party Waffle House Caucus gear, go to the Muddied Waters Media store at muddiedwatersofreedom.com/store, and you can do exactly that. The Gravy King, Joe Solosky, is running for governor of Pennsylvania. Joe Solosky is the key to Pennsylvania's success, and if you'd like to help him become the first libertarian governor ever, go to joesolosky.com. That's JOESOLOSKI.com. Mudwater, the most appropriately named sponsor that Muddy Waters Media will ever have. If you woke up today and said, Spike, I am so sick of coffee. I don't know why you'd be waking up and talking to me, but, that's happy to be here for you. Spike, I'm so sick of coffee. I don't want to drink it anymore. I'm addicted to caffeine. My wife probably going to leave me. Children hate me. Everything's falling apart in my life. Frankly, the coffee's probably just a part of it, but I got to start somewhere. I'd like to change to an alternative. Maybe something with, masala chai, cacao, mushrooms, turmeric, sea salt, cinnamon, and literally nothing else. Well, folks, I have some great news for you. One, it's probably not the coffee that's causing all those problems. But two, if you do really just want to start there with the coffee, we do have Mudwater, which is definitely more healthy than coffee. It has 1/7 the caffeine of a cup of coffee, just enough caffeine to get you all hyped up and excited. Like this, I'm actually not. I'm still dealing with post-COVID fatigue, so I'm not really hyped up, but just pretend that I'm hyped up. Like this, but not so much caffeine that you end up with that crash at the end of the day and heart problems and addiction like this. I have heart problems. I actually don't have heart problems. This is more acting than anything. So if you go to muddywatersofreedom.com/mud, you can get your starter pack today. Jack Casey has written 3 books. Are they good? I have no idea. I refuse to ever read these books. And frankly, anytime that it's suggested to me, I'm that much less likely to ever read them. But you should read them by going to theroyalgreen.com today and getting the Royal Green in Silver Throne and Crowned by Gold. If you get these 3 books, you can then be yet another person to hassle me about whether they're good or not. Defy the Power and Stitches and Glitches make the finest libertarian-themed and otherwise themed tumblers on Earth. They're great things. They're great. They keep your hots hot. They keep your colds cold. They keep your lukewarms. Pretty much whatever temperature you put in that, it will remain that for an ungodly number of hours. If you go to stitchesandglitches.com or defythepower.com, you can get yours today. We have, because there was a code, Muddy Tumbler, for 10% off. We continued telling you to use this code long after it expired back in, I believe, October. And they've gotten so many people using Muddy Tumbler that they've decided to reactivate it, I think because they were getting angry emails from some of you. Even though they had long given up on it long ago. This was our fault, not theirs. But they have, due to your bullying and ours, they have reactivated the code Muddy Tumbler to get 10% off. And all customization is free, which is insane. Like, you don't go somewhere and say, yeah, I'd like this picture and I want you to add this to it and that to it. And they go, okay, that'll be $0 additional dollars. But Defy the Power and Stitches and Glitches do that. And they do negotiate with terrorists, which is why you can now use Muddy Tumbler again for 10% off. If you listen to all these ads and said, Spike, this was way too many ads. This was ridiculous, and I'm going to sue you. Well, good luck, pal, because if you're in Florida, I'm going to sue you back with personal injury attorney, Chris Reynolds, attorney at law. That's right, folks. If you live in the state of Florida and you find yourself to be personally injured in some discernible way and would like to get money for it, if you go to chrisreynoldslaw.com, Chris will get you so much money, just obscene amounts of money, the kind of money, walking around money that you can walk around with and make others feel jealous of you. And they go, wow, you must have really worked hard in life and made sacrifices and had long-term goals and plans. And you go, no, I was personally injured. And then I went to chrisreynoldslaw.com and look at all these stacks of cash I got. chrisreynoldslaw.com. The intro and outro music to this and every episode of My Fellow Americans comes from the amazing and talented Mr. Joe Davi. That's Jodavi. Check him out on Facebook, on SoundCloud. Go to his Bandcamp, jodavimusic.bandcamp.com. I'd like to thank Kroger for this water that I bought at their store and have been drinking, because that's how groceries work. Bolivanaka. Shout out to Daron Turks' mom and him as always. Folks, if you follow my social media, well, I'm happy for you, because it's good stuff on there, huh? But if you go into my social media, you will often hear of me talking about a group in Tennessee called For All Tennessee. And I'm going to let one of the people, I probably should have, what you can tell me, no one's going to hear you. What is your title at For All Tennessee again? You're one of the founders, but is you the president and founder, co-founder, but foralltennessee.com, well, that is their website, or .org. But if you go to For All Tennessee, they have some incredible stuff that they are doing, and we have the president and founder of For All Tennessee on the show. We're going to be talking about what they have done in just 1 year's time and what they plan to do in the coming year. Ladies and gentlemen, my fellow Americans, please welcome to the show Mr. Justin Cornett. Justin, thanks for coming on again, man.
Thanks for having me, Spike. As always, the pleasure is mine.
Yes, well, thank you. I do my best, even when I do forget what your title is. But no, I've been very thrilled to help promote y'all as much as I can, and I'm really happy to have you on. And folks, before we get started, as always, I will remind you to leave us in the comments, if you're watching this live, you leave us your thoughts and questions, and we will tell you if you are right or wrong. Now, if you are watching this and it's not live anymore, go ahead and leave your comments, because one of us will probably answer anyway. I know I will at some point. So, Justin, before we get started talking about 2022, for those who have not watched the previous episodes with you on it, first of all, how dare you? And second of all, but for those who haven't, tell us a little bit about For All Tennessee, the catalyst behind what made you decide to do it, and a little bit of a cue there, and tell us a little bit about what you were able to accomplish in just your first year of lobbying on the Capitol Hill there in Tennessee.
Yeah, sure. So I've got a background doing some lobbying work on the Hill with a handful of different organizations, including the Libertarian Party, Americans for Prosperity, and this. And what we set out to do was create an organization that genuinely works for regular folks, something that asks people what they would like to see done at the legislature, and then goes and does it. It's a really crazy concept.
That's insane.
Apparently we're the only ones. So, and yeah, the idea came, it kind of struck me when I was in Dallas in your presence, trying to find a way to impress you. So I came up with I fired my best shot, and you said it was not a bad idea. And yes. Here we are.
So this all started, you're
100%.
In front of me, and you're like, I'm in front of Spike Cohen, the man who is about to place third in his race for vice president of I assume many other people running third place. That's, it is what it is. And
podium.
I have to say something. That's on the podium. Exactly. This man is about to get on the proverbial podium for the White House, and I have to say something. What am I going to say? I'm doing a grassroots lobbying group in Tennessee. And now you called your own bluff, and now you're doing it. No, tell us a little bit about about some of the things. 'Cause I was just beyond impressed with what you were able to accomplish, you and Josh, in such a short period. You know, when you said we're going to go out on Tennessee Capitol Hill, I'm assuming the first year is just spent, you know, kind of getting in there, getting to know people, you know, trying to make relationships. Maybe you get some proposals out there. I was utterly shocked with what you were able to accomplish. Tell us a little bit about what you were able to do in your very first year in the Tennessee Capitol.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had established relationships going into this. We at one time ran the largest Libertarian Party affiliate in the country, according
Yep.
to the former national chair. And we would regularly, every month, see somewhere between 60 and 80 people. And, you know, just the regular monthly meetings. And what we were doing was we were acknowledging that we didn't know everything about the way government works, because it's one thing to say it shouldn't be this way, and it's another thing to figure out how to fix it. So the more knowledge that you could pour into somebody's lap, the better informed they are when it comes to decision making time. I mean, that's the basic logic. So we would run elected officials through our meetings and let them tell us what they were doing in the community and what was going on, and we'd partner with a representative on, you know, constitutional carry legislation or decrim legislation, or, you know, a number of different civil asset forfeiture stuff. I mean, a number of different things, and made friends that way. And that kind of gave us a ramp to get into doing this. So it wasn't starting completely from scratch, but
Right.
at the same time, it's not like we've got a lot of connections or allies or people willing to stick their neck out for us right now either.
Right. So give a couple examples. Like, what are some of the big things that you were able to accomplish for 2021?
Well, we got 3 bills through out of 12 that we were trying to get through. We got one bill through that honestly we thought was a really good bill pertaining to civil asset forfeiture. In Tennessee, prior to this legislation, the agency that seized your property was responsible for attorney's fees up to $3,500 or 25% of the property value. The average seizure that we've seen in Tennessee is somewhere maybe not even $2,000, which means that you're getting $400 or $500 for your defense, which means you're not getting a defense. So we got rid of the 25% language, and we got that moved. We got the cap moved to $10,000, thinking the calculus has now changed, and, you know, police have to think there's a chance we're going to pay out $10,000 in legal expense for a $3,000 forfeiture.
Right, it's not worth it. Yeah.
So, like I say, logically, it sounds like a great bill, but I spoke to the head of Defense Attorneys Association here in Tennessee, and he told me that nobody ever gets reimbursed for those fees anyway. Like, never. Like, he's never known anybody that's ever gotten reimbursed for it, because they write the rules on how the reimbursement works too, and you can only get it in one place in the entire state. So, you know, certain places, if you want to challenge for your compensation, you got to drive 6 hours one way to get to the court where you can challenge it. Good times.
I remember that. I remember when you talked about that reform. So they actually have it. I assumed that it was whatever the same system is that they use to reimburse public defenders or people that are providing defense in general.
No,
so they actually have a special system.
Tennessee is the only state, according to Institute for Justice, because they're working with us on civil asset forfeiture stuff. But according to my source at Institute for Justice, Tennessee is the only state that uses an administrative court system. And that administrative court system is, the courtroom is at the Department of Safety. It's not held in a courthouse. It doesn't ever see an actual elected judge. It's not in a court of record. You're not entitled to defense, none of that stuff in Tennessee.
Wow. So in theory, what you passed was a good thing there.
Really,
in actual practice, you're finding out it's not what you were thinking of.
Absolutely.
But now, but there were some other things that you did pass that were pretty good as well. Tell us about that.
So we had a bill that would have prevented anybody at the city, county, or state level from naming businesses essential or non-essential the next time that we have pandemic chaos or whatever. Governor didn't like not being able to make that call, so we amended the bill and got him off of it. But we did pass it so that cities and counties can no longer do that.
Well, that's good.
Governor is the only one that can do that now. So not the entire win, but close. And then the biggest one we got is probably the strongest police reform bill that's been passed in the last few years, since everything's been on fire every summer for the last couple of years. And we did it in Tennessee, and there were 0 no votes on this bill. So I can't take all the credit. I will say that I did not talk to 132 members in the legislature, but the governor in the state has a mind to do some criminal justice reform items. So we found out about midway through the process that he was pushing in our direction as well. So it kind of lightened the load on that one. But that particular bill banned no-knock raids outright, requires de-escalation training. It has limitations around firing at moving vehicles. It is duty to intervene if
that's a big one.
Officer, duty to intervene and duty to report are both in there. I mean, it's a really, really solid bill. And again, 0 no votes in the entire legislature on that bill. So something we were happy to see, and something that gives us a little hope for some of these other things that we'd like to see done.
Yeah, that's fantastic, man. And that duty to intervene, I know a lot of people focused on the no-knock raids and the chokeholds and stuff like that. Duty to intervene, in the last few months, after talking with people in other police departments and other states and other public defenders and also some prosecutors, in many states, they have the exact opposite. They have a duty not to intervene. They have a duty to observe and report, which literally means, when you often will see a police officer standing by another police officer while they murder someone or beat them up or do something that's obviously a violation of the law and the person's rights that they're violating, they actually just stand there. And often, in many states, it's because they have a duty not to intervene. If they intervene, they actually get charged for breaking the law. They're supposed to just observe what they saw and then report it to either their superior or internal affairs, or however it works in their department or in their state. Tennessee has the opposite. They're actually required legally to intervene. So that alone is a huge thing. But coupled with the rest of the reforms in that bill, that was a huge reform of policing practices.
It really was. And again, I mean, when you really think about the things that are in that bill and them being passed in a state that has a Republican supermajority and is a Republican stronghold, it's definitely encouraging because there's a lot of room to improve in the criminal justice system for sure. And this shows that there's definitely a willingness to look at it with an open mind.
Yeah, no, I think it's amazing. So before we get into this is in the comments. Before we get into some of the stuff that you have coming up for 2022, I need to address something that the Scientific Libertarian has mentioned in the comments and on posts that I don't know if it's a he or she, keep tagging me in about their Plan B, which I don't know what Plan A was, but I really would like to revisit Plan A. But their Plan B of confiscating fecal matter from Tom Brady for I don't know what, but something about how that helps with the gut biome. If there was a Plan A, I want to revisit Plan A, please. I don't know whatever plan, like I just want to know what Plan A was, because they got to be better than that. But thank you for your input. Anyway, speaking of which, I guess, so you have 8 items that are the items that you are actively working on for the 2022 session in the legislature there. Now, just so I understand it, these are things you actually brought up in polling to your membership and to people who submitted to your polling to say what the top priorities were, right? Like this wasn't just chosen randomly.
Yeah. So, as you alluded to earlier, we alluded to earlier, the idea is to kind of serve the general public. So, what
Right.
we do is we spend a lot of time putting issues out with explainers and asking people their opinions on them, and then after we get so many of these different things out there, we will have a vote, and what they vote on becomes a short list, and then it's what bills can we get filed, and
Right.
how much capacity do we have to work, or how many bills can we work, how can we consolidate them, all those different things. So I think we've landed on, I think it's about 14 bills. I haven't counted recently, but I think it's 14 pieces of legislation that we
Yes.
have on the sheet total. And yeah, like 4 bills are civil asset forfeiture
Yep.
bills. There are 3 that are on bond reform. And then there's, ballot access bill. There's a 2 on facial recognition or data collection, the information state kind of stuff. So a nice, wide, diverse set of policies, because we want there to be something for everybody to love in that, and nothing for anybody to hate. You can disagree with some of that stuff. I mean, you can think that police need an extra source of income and still not think that, or think that they should not be allowed to use facial recognition technology.
Yes.
So we try to set it up with the vote. So we don't work on anything that the membership does not approve. People that give us money do not approve. And then the other thing is we do keep all those buckets separate. So if you want to donate, you can donate to whatever issue is important to you, and you don't have to worry about your money going to something that is not or against your interests.
Okay, I like that. So you're not just saying, we want your input on what we do and what we don't do, and if there's any kind of significant pushback, we're not going to do certain things. You're even saying, even after that, you actually segregate these things from each other, and if someone
Right.
only wants to give to this specific thing or everything but this specific thing, they can continue doing that. I like
Correct.
that. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So this is go ahead.
I was just going to say, we looked around at other nonprofits and, that operate in this policy space. And what we found over and over again was every single thing out there has a board or a group of people that set an agenda, and then they come out and ask everybody to buy into their agenda and throw money at it. And the problem with that is, there's so many different things that we're divided on these days that it's hard for a person to find something that works only toward everything that they want. So we thought, let's let them vote. And that means that we're going to get a more accurate representation of what they want. And then on top of that, we'll segregate it. So if anything gets through that they don't like, they don't have to feel obligated, or they don't have to feel like their money's going to something that they don't want it to do.
Mm-hmm.
I really think it's a paradigm shift in the structure of a nonprofit. And I think it's why we will we are inevitable because of the way this works, I think.
I was going to say, there are so many people. I know a lot of people, even in the libertarian spheres, who, civil asset forfeiture, they're behind getting rid of or at least greatly reforming it. Certainly decriminalizing marijuana, ballot access stuff. But the bond reform thing might scare them. Maybe and it may even be because they aren't fully informed on it. But they look at bond reform and go, well, you know what? I want criminals to not have easier ways to get out. I know that yours is addressing nonviolent bond, but I'm just giving an example of and if someone is strongly enough about that sours them on the whole thing, or just keeps them from helping or donating or being involved. But where you say, no, you don't even have, you could support every other single thing on here except for that, that allows for that kind of decentralization. I think it's great. So let's go over these. Like you said, you've got them. They're in 14 bills in 8 broad categories. So I'm going to just do them in the order that you have them numbered here. The first one are a few bills that either limit or eliminate civil asset forfeiture. Why don't we go over those?
Sure. So again, the way the state works currently is we have this administrative court system, and it is a bureaucratic court that doesn't abide by the same rules of any court system in the state. We have one big goal or one big bill that would end it entirely. It would end the administrative court system. It would turn everything into a criminal seizure, and it would even leave some carve outs for the semi truck that's picked up on the side of the road that's got $100,000 and a couple kilos of cocaine inside of a locked trailer, and the driver doesn't know whose it is or who he's driving for or any of that stuff. It leaves those carve outs in it, and we think it actually has a good chance based on the conversation that we had last year in subcommittee on some of our bills. There were a handful of reps, and most of them were lawyers that were suggesting that the whole thing needed to be in a court of record, and that's exactly what this bill does. So it's a first bite at the apple. So not a lot of them have heard this yet, and it's an election year. So the goal is to move through session as fast as possible and not bring up a whole lot of controversial things. And it could be deemed as controversial and something that they need to think about for a year before they really actually act on it. But I think it's got a legitimate chance at passage, particularly in the House. But if we get that one through, we don't need any of the rest of the bills that we have, which is kind of great. The rest of the bills that we have, 2 of them are carryovers from last year. One of them removes a $350 bond that you have to pay before you can attempt to try to get your stuff back from the agency that took it from you. It's a true story. It's exactly how it works by law.
Wow.
And it's $350. So if they took some cash and a car and a gun, it's 3 $350 bonds. So yes, so no joke. So we had a bill last year
straight up highway robbery.
Right. So we had it's a fee in order to attempt to get property that was taken from you when they didn't charge you or convict you of a crime. Yes. So at any rate, we got the bill passed through the relevant committees, and it got hung up in finance last year and ended up what's called behind the budget, which means it was passed, but it didn't get funded. So it's sitting there this year, and we're hoping to get it funded this year. We've got another bill that's in the same boat, actually. So that one is from last year, and we've got a reporting bill that got shot down from last year because right now we don't know how many criminal convictions are eventually tied to a civil forfeiture. So we think that's a relevant piece of information if we would like to know how much of a problem we have in a state where we average somewhere between $15 and $18 million seized through civil forfeiture every year. And then the last one we have is actually targeted at Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency, and it would make them run all of their seizures through a court of record. Because they handle it all in-house, and TWRA oversees the seizure proceedings for the stuff that TWRA seizes.
That's incredible. So, and that would also make it where it's deposited into a general fund and not in their agency, which kind of disincentivizes the whole thing because you're no longer getting to keep this money for your agency. It's going into a general fund, so it's not like you're getting any additional money.
Correct. Now, that section is probably not going to actually make it through because the fiscal note attached to the bill. So you draft a bill, you file the bill gets a review by fiscal review, which assesses whether or not it's going to cost or bring in money. Um,
Right.
and the fiscal review on that particular line suggested that the state could lose $27 million in federal funding if it diverts that money to the general fund. So I don't expect that piece of it to go very far, but we might be able to take the rest of it with it.
Hopefully so. And like you said, hopefully you can just completely scrap this entire civil asset
Right.
forfeiture and that you don't have to worry about it anymore. We actually got a question from Doug Haynes asking, why would a bill that eliminates a bond require funding to be able to be a part, actually, I guess,
Because
enforceable?
theoretically there are X amount of seizures a year. Say there's 10,000 seizures in a year.
Okay.
Then each one's paying $350. 10,000 times 350, what? 3.5 million or 350, yeah, whatever it is,
Okay. Okay.
350 and some zeros.
Yeah.
And if you get rid of the bond, they would lose that revenue. So it's a decrease. So they have to, a decrease in revenue is, so
So
you know
then
how it is.
whatever their version of the Congressional Budget Office says it's going to cost, they have to have
Right.
that actually worked into the budget in case
Right.
it actually costs that much. Okay, all right, cool. Well, so we know that. And see, these are the types of things that, like you said, it's one thing to say government shouldn't run this way. It's another way to actually look at the mechanism and say, okay, great, it shouldn't run this way. Who do we talk to about changing it? How do we get it changed? And then how do we actually make sure the change happens? And how does
Right.
that work? So it's,
Yeah.
this is the part libertarians often hate because we hate the entire function. But
We,
if you
we,
want
we,
to actually get it done, you have to know these things and you have to work through it.
we just don't have the patience and for the minutia and the nuance that is required to be, actually successful in an effort to change things. We constantly jump the gun and yell really loud and get
Yes.
mad because nothing happened when we yelled really loud. It's just not the way that the game that we're forced to play works.
Yes. And you would say that because you're not a real libertarian. So anyway, the
I am not, actually.
no, I know. You're like such a fake libertarian. Anyway, so bond reform is the second thing here. And I believe this is just one bill, right? And tell us, I mentioned this. This is something that is often controversial even in libertarian circles. What is your bond reform bill that you're trying to get through?
So there's actually three bills,
Oh, okay.
and one does one thing that's completely separate, and the other two are very, very similar. But one of the bills is very simple. Current law in Tennessee is, you are arrested, you go to jail, you do whatever, you get out, you're on probation. Okay.
Right.
While you're on probation, you commit some kind of offense and you violate your probation. You get a DUI. Okay. Something like that. Whatever. So what happens is you're arrested for the DUI, of course. Okay. You go to jail and you bond out. 2 days later, your probation officer catches wind of the fact that you got a DUI. So he issues a second arrest warrant. And they go and they pick you up at work because they know that's where you're going to be and you're less likely to be armed. And that probably ends up making you lose your job. And that starts the
Yes.
spiral that creates dependency on the state and all these different things, right?
Yeah.
So all the first bill does is take that second arrest for violation of probation and turn it into a summons to court. That's all it does.
Which is
So instead of right, we don't expect a whole lot of fight on that one. We really think that one will sail right through. I will be really disappointed if it doesn't, because I mean it's just such a minor thing and it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But the other two bills would require a judge to have, in his opinion, clear and convincing evidence that bail is required to prevent a person from fleeing the jurisdiction or causing harm in the community. So what that will do is open the door for a lot of people to be released on their own recognizance and show up to court and save a ton of tax dollars on pre-incarceration or pre-sentencing incarceration. There's a institute, a group called the Sycamore Institute in Tennessee that's tied loosely to the state and has funding from a lot of prominent institutions in the state. And they did a study in 2017 that said 51% of all the dollars spent on incarceration in Tennessee were spent on people that had not yet been convicted of a crime. People
Really?
that were, yes, people that 51%, right? People that were sitting there because they couldn't afford to bond out or something along those lines.
Yeah.
Cost more than the people that have actually committed crimes and been convicted. So this we
Over
hope
half.
help that scenario. Yes, over half.
Wow. Yes, this would definitely help that scenario. Now, one thing I will say, I mean, hopefully this gets passed. One thing I will say, I actually talked with a judge, or actually a retired judge, who talked to me about, and there's actually a phrase they use to describe this problem when it comes to bail decisions and sentencing decisions and leniency decisions and things like that. A judge, especially an elected judge. So theoretically, let's say a judge has 100 cases in front of them, and they tend to be a more lenient judge. And so, unless someone poses a clear and present danger to the public, they tend to err on the side of letting that person go, or on giving, letting them have some kind of a parole or probation instead of sentencing them, or letting them out on their bond if we're talking about this type of thing, or letting them out without a bond. And 99 out of those 100 times, they go, very smoothly, or 100 out of 100 times it goes very smoothly. There's no news story about that. People don't go, oh, local judge is very lenient on, people being accused of crimes. What a great thing. And they interview people who go, oh, I could have been in jail right now, but I'm not. I'm at home with my family. If one of those people, unrelated to what they were even in there for, goes off and robs a bank or kills someone or whatever, the story is lenient judge causes death of, daycare workers or whatever ends up happening. And so
Right.
even with nothing but good actors, there's this fear among judges, or I shouldn't say fear. There's this tendency among many judges to just be really, really tough, because, especially elected judges, because they're not rewarded for the times that the vast majority of the time that their leniency leads to a net positive, they're punished for when it doesn't. This still at least gives them that option, instead of creating this statutory requirement that they come in. But sort of in the same token that the civil asset forfeiture thing didn't go quite originally the way that everyone was hoping. I wonder. I will be interested to see if this bond, if that bond reform gets passed as well. The first one you said is, like you said, that's a no-brainer. You've already been arrested. You're already being, processed. Having a second arrest that simply muddles the process, costs taxpayer money, probably loses you your job. That makes no sense. I don't think there's going to be any issue there. I will be interested to see if that other bond reform gets passed, how much resistance there is by judges to being maybe slightly more lenient because of that issue. I don't know if you've talked to anyone about that, but that would be an interest of mine, how that would play out.
The particular that clear and convincing language that represents a 75% threshold of certainty that a judge has to have. So they have some wiggle room there for sure, and it's still to their discretion. But you're right. That story would be the story that breaks. The problem is that story is always going to be the story that breaks on any of these things. And, we, the people, have to be smart enough to realize that that's part of a scare tactic that's intentional, that it has a particular mission to it, but we're actually in pretty good shape on this bill. I think it's got a better than 50% chance of passage. The person that is bringing the bill in the Senate well, one bill is a Republican bill, and the other bill is a Democrat bill.
Okay.
And the Republican bill is actually arguably stronger. There's one line in the Democrat bill that references bail having to be set at a dollar amount that could be paid by the individual. That line is not in the Republican bill, and I'm in talks about trying to get that line added to it.
Yeah.
But the senator who's sponsoring the bill is the chair of the Judiciary Committee that would hear the bill initially, and the sponsor in the House is the chair of the Civil Justice Committee that would hear the bill initially. That's good, because those are their committees, and those are the committees that they have to go through. Also, there's a different senator who has been touring the state and having conversations about bail reform and stuff like this. He's the number 3 guy in the Senate, Republican, all that good stuff. So this is something that he was passionate about, and he had a component that was the 75% threshold in a different bill that we had on our list, but he pulled that section off, and now his bill is just a bail bondsman licensing scheme. But I wonder if he pulled his off because this bill is similar enough to his language, and everybody's happy with that particular bill. And we're going to talk about a couple different ways to regulate bondsmen, and that's going to be the real topic of discussion in this session around bond.
Yeah, I was going to say, when you were saying that, I thought, well, maybe that's just because he knows this or the other bill are largely addressing what we're in his anyway. So that's good. I mean, there's certainly a taxpayer savings argument to be made here, if nothing else, especially if you're saying over half is people that haven't even been convicted yet.
I think everybody realizes that in the state too. I mean, even the people that are more pro law enforcement, or however you want to describe it, tough on crime. I think that they realize that the founding fathers wrote the Constitution, and you had certain rights for certain reasons. And if you were not a threat to society, you were not supposed to be sitting and rotting in a jail cell. And your day in court will come, and your penalty will be assessed. I mean, it is what it is. So
yeah. No, it's a non-violent. You specified non-violent crimes here, and if it's a non-violent crime, that means the likelihood of this person being a threat to the public is markedly lower, which means it's basically they're being imprisoned for being poor, and that's without being charged, without being convicted of anything yet. So okay, so this next one,
long time for sure.
Yes, absolutely. So I hopefully it will pass. Next one, automatic criminal record expungement, which I absolutely love. Talk to us about this.
So I've learned a lot on this one, and there's definitely some nuance in this that I didn't really think about. And it seems that's kind of these two bills that are here that you see there are one's a Republican bill, one's a Democrat bill. The Republican bill clarifies that just because you got a new offense doesn't mean that you can't have an old qualifying offense expunged.
Yeah.
So, it's a small cleanup bill, nice and easy, but one that works for sure. The Democrat bill is an automatic expungement once your time elapsed, qualifying offenses, all that good stuff. Because there's an expungement system that exists in Tennessee right now. If you meet certain things, like you were never convicted, stuff still hits your record, and you can get those things expunged with no charge. If you have a conviction, you have to pay a fee and fill out a form, but it's an easy process. I'm not saying it's not. The Democrat bill would make that process entirely automatic. But there's a question about whether or not there should be a place that stores the sealed records of the expungement, or if it just disappears, because there have been some cases in which the person who was guilty of the offense had to
Yeah.
go back and get that documentation, and that documentation doesn't exist in a typical expungement. Um,
Oh, okay.
so right. So there's some nuance there that I'm
Yeah, yeah.
honestly still trying to catch up on because I didn't realize it was there when I picked it up. But this bill would create a sealed records vault essentially that could only be accessed by a lawyer, the lawyers and the judge working a case that pertained to the individual or the
Yeah.
individual itself. Um, so with those stipulations in it, I don't really see a huge issue with that. But one of the gentleman that's running the other bill on expungement that you see there, he's actually the number 2 guy in the House, Republican. He's the majority leader, and he intimated that, and if you have an expungement, it should just be gone. That shouldn't be sitting in a sealed record somewhere for it to come back and bite you on the back end. So I don't know. We're gonna use this bill to test the waters.
Yeah.
Can't say that I expect it to go incredibly far, but we're gonna have some conversations. We're gonna learn about some reasons that people might oppose it, and see if we can come out with a more perfect bill next year.
Yeah, I was going to say, because the fact that the number 2 Republican, their concern is privacy in the future, that bodes well for whatever this ends up looking like passing, because if that's the concern as well, if we create this thing, it could bite them in the future, which is the whole point of why we're trying to let them get expunged. That's the kind of answers you want to hear, right? Like, you want to hear concerns about that. But wouldn't that be ironic? You get something expunged, then you have to prove it was expunged, but you can't because it was expunged.
Right. I know.
Can you
And
just
I,
look
I,
me up and see that I don't have anything on my record? No, we have to know proof that it's expunged. But it was expunged. Yes, but we need proof. There's no proof that. So yeah, that's interesting. That's a process question, but that will be good. You run it through, you see what the process concerns are going to be, and then either in this session or the next one, you can bring in the more perfect bill and actually get this done. Hopefully, the other cleanup one gets done in the meantime.
Yeah, it's already gone through 2 committees. It's already passed the 2 committees and is ready to get funded.
Nice. The funding thing is interesting, because I've heard that at the federal level, but a lot of people don't realize something can get passed, and then if it hasn't been funded, it's like it hasn't been passed, and so then you have to go back and say, can you fund this? Because otherwise, it's an unfunded mandate. Which, if that's Social Security or Medicare, that's perfectly fine. But everything else, has to be funded.
Everything else, it's a Ponzi scheme.
Everything else is a Ponzi scheme. Not requiring a bond to get your own stuff back that was taken without any kind of conviction. It's such a scam. We got to make sure this is funded first. So number 4, I like, and it's basically different alternatives to incarceration or pretrial detention. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's the 2 bond bills I was just covering. I apologize for it being formatted the way that it is.
I see. Okay.
Flattered it, but yeah, that's the 2 bond bills that require the 75% threshold before a judge sets bond.
No, I like it. I'm a huge fan of bond reform. I think if my 2, and I know all the arguments against this, but if my 2 options are the status quo or the absolute elimination of bond for all things, and the judge has to flat out say that this person's a threat, or else they get to go on their own recognizance, I would go with that. So I'm a huge bond reform fan in general. I'm almost as much of an absolutionist on that as absolutist on this as I can be. So number 5, go ahead.
I was going to say you'd find yourself in good company with some of those guys that helped write the Constitution and found the nation and signed off on the work that Jefferson
did tar and feather politicians and stuff. Yeah, no, so that's a total side note here. It is very interesting to see that this country, which was founded by some of what we would consider to be, like straight up insurgent extremists, God rest their souls, now, and understandably so, with the concern of stability and things like that, people, we get together once a year. Has nothing to do with anything you're doing. But we get together once a year and we shoot off rockets to commemorate the war that happened between the people that were in charge back then and the people who wanted to kill them, and who then won and then created a new country where there was going to be protections and everything. And then we turn around and anyway, it's a very interesting thing. But
what I would point out is, the country was essentially founded by a group of guys that got drunk in a bar, dressed up as Indians, went and jumped on a boat, started throwing tea in the ocean, and gave the middle finger to the king, telling him to come and take it. And, just a few days ago, we had Homeland Security put out a threat warning about domestic terrorists being interested in their individual rights and stuff like that.
Everyone.
What world do we live in, man?
If you post on social media your concerns about COVID-19 restrictions, you are a potential domestic terrorist and will be treated thusly. Anyway,
so Spike.
No, well, listen, if I'm not on, I need to be on. I say this many times because people are like, "Oh, how do you know they're not tracking you?" I'm like, if I'm not being actively monitored by at least like 7 national governments, then they're not.
Somebody's doing their job.
Someone is failing. Someone is failing. Anyway, so number five is one of our favorites, of course, decriminalizing marijuana. And this actually has, the stereotype in the South. I live in South Carolina where we treat weed like heroin. And right. I mean, it's bad. So the stereotype is that there's like no appetite for this kind of stuff, even with cannabis. How has tell us about what you're trying to pass, and how have these been received so far?
Well, this bill is, again, a different bite at the apple.
Okay.
This bill puts a question on the ballot. It does not, it's a non-binding referendum. So it doesn't create law regardless of how the vote goes, but it will tell the legislators where the registered voters in the state land on 3 questions: decriminalization, legalization, and medical. It's being brought by like the guy that has a life-size cutout of Trump in his office is the House sponsor on the bill, and a Democrat is the Senate sponsor on the bill. So we're going to go out and work this bill. And, the House sponsor told me that he thinks that the people should be able to decide the question. And we're going to go out and we're going to lobby everybody else to vote on this bill by asking them the question. It's really simple. Do you think the people should be able to weigh in on this question? That's really, that's all this is. If you support it, that's what you support. If you do not support it, then you do not support people's voice being heard and self-governance and all those fun things that we talk about as conservatives that we want to see.
Well, I mean, this is literally, do you think people should be allowed to give a public poll as to whether or not they support this thing with, like you said, there's no binding here at all. There's no obligation at all. Interestingly enough, you mentioned life-size cutout of Trump. Trump has said multiple times he thinks that cannabis should be legal and that he would have signed any bill that had gotten in front of him that did that. And I tend to, I believe when he says that, because he's been kind of consistent on that for quite some time, even before he was in politics. So I tend to think that was actually true. I think the fact that we're still having this conversation, despite the fact that the vast majority of people support either full legalization, decriminalization, or at least, greatly, honestly, they support, it's like in the 60-70 percentile range, support full legalization, and yet we're still having to play these baby steps at many state and the federal level. It just shows how government's like the lagging indicator of the will of the people. But I will be, hopefully this gets in and people will be, and like you said in your notes here, 92% of arrests related to cannabis were just for possession. So even if you're like, oh, but the drug dealer, this is just people possessing cannabis.
Right, small amounts, because possession is a small amount. A intent to distribute is a different crime,
Yep.
and you get intent to distribute, I think, if you're holding anything over an ounce. So, I mean, we're not talking about people moving gigantic amounts of drugs.
Or even multiple bags. Like I remember back in the day of my previous life, where one of the first things I would do if I got multiple bags was put it all in one bag because that was a crime to have, I was like, oh, you're distributing. It's like, no, it just came in more than one bag. But yeah. So not that I've ever done drugs or anything like that. But number six, because in South Carolina, you want to talk about a reform needed. South Carolina, there is no statute of limitations for anything.
Really?
Anything.
Wow.
And I
That's
know that because I have great memory because I've never done drugs in my entire life. Not in South Carolina. Ever.
It's probably a good thing that you haven't done them in South Carolina.
Anytime I even considered it, I would just go over to North Carolina where they do have a statute of limitations. Then I'd come back to South Carolina. Once it was completely out of my system, I'd sober up and then come back to South Carolina. Because
Outer Banks, beautiful.
Yes, it's good. Thankfully I lived close to the border. So number six is something that is just an incredible. So minor party ballot access. I'm going to let you describe what this does, and then we're going to have a talk about how this went last year because I thought this passed last year. But tell us about this.
Well, it's the favorite libertarian pet issue.
Yes.
Ballot access for everybody and not just the two big boys. So in Tennessee, Democrats, Republicans, and independents have to have 25 signatures to get on a ballot. Everybody else has to have 56,082 signatures. To put it in perspective how tall of a mountain that is, in Maine, the Republican Party was trying to collect, I think it was 51,000 signatures or something like that, to get something on the ballot in this past election cycle. And they spent $750,000. The Republican Party, who has this gigantic network, spent $750,000 and failed to get the 51,000 signatures. So it is a barrier, to say the very least, and it's an unwarranted barrier. There are 4 states in the country that require 0 signatures. And none of those are states that are dominated by third parties or have third parties that are wildly competitive versus the two big guys. So it's a pointless number that we have that is unattainable. And instead of asking them to make it even and fair, we are asking them to bring us in line with the rest of the country and drop our number to something closer to the 13 to 15,000 range from that 56,000. So we had the votes last year in subcommittee. 8 people on subcommittee. We had 5 votes confirmed the day of, and we lost on a voice vote somehow, despite not actually losing.
Yes.
And in that subcommittee, we had a representative get up and explain the opposition to the bill in a way that was very truthful, and I commend the guy for his honesty.
He was
Really
honest. Yeah.
But I think most people would disagree with his logic on that, because he essentially said that we shouldn't pass the bill because if we do, people might vote for these other parties, and that would take votes away from my party and your party, Mr. Sponsor. I mean, that's paraphrasing, but it's doggone close to exactly what he said.
Yeah, no, he flat out said the 2 things that really stood out there were, well, the fact that you had the votes, 5 people out of the 8 said aye, and then the person in charge said, yep, the nays have it. So that was fun. But the telling thing was, and I forget that representative's name, but he, oh, okay, yeah. And he said, very honestly, he said, you have Democrats and you have Republicans. And if this passes, then it could, confuse things and have more people not voting Democrat or Republican. And it was like, well,
He literally said, we have Democrats and we have Republicans, and I think everybody in Tennessee thinks one of those two ways.
Yes. Yeah. There is a
Literally.
binary. Yeah, no, that's what he said. You're either a Democrat or a Republican, and this could confuse things. People might start thinking there's other stuff. Well, yeah, because there is. Anyway, so but you're saying, so you believe
I
this,
think.
you're fairly confident that this will pass this time, or at least in committee it'll pass.
Yeah. So the House, we think we will do well in. The Senate is a much bigger question mark.
Okay.
So the strategy on this is try to move it fast in the House and get it to the floor, or maybe even get it passed in the House, and then try to slam it through the Senate with, being able to tell them it's already passed the House. We're just waiting on y'all. And so we went back. The subcommittee is the same this year as it was last year. We went back to our 5 yes votes, made sure that they were all still with us. They all said they were. Had a conversation with the chairman, who I would like to reiterate swears he didn't do it on purpose, and he knows that the bill's coming back, and did not say anything like, "Oh, well, I'm going to kill it," or anything like that. He just told me to make sure that people speak up, because he knows what happened last time. Okay.
Yes.
And he literally did tell me that. Make sure particular people speak up.
Enunciate.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we're gonna run it through subcommittee next week, barring any flukes, and that'll have it ready for the full committee. Looking at the full committee, I think 75%. There's like 20 on the full committee, and I think probably 15 of them have either co-sponsored the bill last year or the year before. I haven't chased down co-sponsors this year. So they all know what it is. And I think we've got a strong majority in the full committee as well. So I'd be surprised if we didn't get it to the House floor at the very least. Whether or not we can get it to pass in the House, I think we can, but I can't say with 100% certainty. And like I say, the Senate's going to be a much bigger chore.
We'll see. The closer you get to it, the more it gets normalized. The more the idea of like, hey, and the thing is, Tennessee's Constitution mandates that your elections are free and equal. So this doesn't even try to be free. Truly free and equal would be the same 25 signatures that Republicans and Democrats and Independents have to get. This is saying let's split the difference. Right now we're at absurd amount. Let's go to less absurd amount instead of actually free and equal. So I think it's a reasonable compromise. So
at least that less absurd amount is possibly attainable, whereas the absurd amount that we have now is not.
It's not. No, in fact, the Libertarian Party of Tennessee doesn't even try, because 56,000 is more like 110,000, 120,000, whatever. So, okay, so number 7, this is actually 2 bills that would, each of them in a different way, restrict facial recognition use by the government and by law enforcement. Talk to us about that.
Sure. So, it's 2 pieces. I think the first one that's listed there, I'm not looking at the list. They're both bills. They both have the same 2 sponsors. At any rate, one of the 2 bills is based off of New Hampshire code. So New Hampshire passed a ban on law enforcement use of facial recognition technology at the city, county, and state level. In doing my homework, I found it, read over it. It's a really good looking bill. Ran it through the folks out at Libertas, ran it through IJ folks, a handful of professors out here at local universities, and just kind of got their feedback and stuff on it. And this is what came out in the wash. The bill would prevent, currently as it's written, the state couldn't touch, like nobody could provide information through facial recognition tech to the state and the state act on it. Like they can't do anything at all with facial recognition with this bill. So it might have to have a slight opening in it, because I would imagine Bridgestone Arena where we have Preds hockey games and, we've got concerts and stuff. Maybe they've got an unruly fan or something, and they banned him from the building, and that's the way or the reason they use this. But, outside the building one night, he tried to get in, he gets in this gigantic fight, and they can identify him because they're using this technology on their premises. Right. I kind of wonder if there needs to be a carve out where they could say, hey, this happened outside. We have it on video. We also know who your suspect is because we have this technology. As it's written right now, the police couldn't act on it that way. But like I say, that's a conversation that I'm having with legal counsel in the Senate right now, and the Senate sponsor. But nonetheless, very good, very clean bill, cut and dry. They can't use it, bottom line. And the other bill is actually about communications, like electronic communications. Currently, there's no warrant required to search any of the databases that they have access to. None at all. Like they can call up your cable company or whatever and say, hey, I need this, and they don't have to have a warrant to do it.
Which, how does that even pass constitutional muster? Don't they? I mean,
I don't have any idea. But so this bill, there's an organization in Tennessee called the Beacon Center that does a lot of more economic leaning, liberty oriented issues. And they actually wrote this bill, and we're partnering with them on it. When they handed me this language, I'm pulling it up because the way these bills work, it's like, this piece of code is amended by deleting and substituting this. I'm like reading it in the code, and the code as it's written now is just like, if a DA asks, you got to give it to them. If a police ask, you got to give it to them. I mean, it's as simple as that.
This strikes me, and it's good that you're addressing this with this bill. This strikes me as one of those things that obviously is going to, absent being removed by this change, is going to end up in front of the courts, the federal courts, and they're going to go, the Fourth Amendment, you can't, you have to have a warrant for this kind of stuff. There's no reason that you would do. There's no, absent some kind of immediate exigent threat or something. There's absolutely no reason you should be able to casually call someone's cable company and be like, we need all their information. We need all their communication. That's, you're going to get more from someone's communications than you can from searching their house. Give me a break.
Well, let's be real here. I mean, let me give you an anecdote. True story from week before, not this past week, but the week before. I was on the Hill in the Senate trying to find somebody to sponsor the full-on ban on facial recognition, right? I was, going office to office asking who wants it, right? And I walked into this one guy's office because he was suggested to me by somebody. And I'm having this conversation with him about what the bill would do and what the New Hampshire legislation looked like and all that good stuff. And I'm explaining the Fourth Amendment general warrants as a term.
Lawmaker.
To a lawmaker. State senator. And as I'm doing this, he cuts me off and says, I don't know a lot about history or the Constitution, so I don't know if I'd be the guy to run this bill. So, I mean, you can say, how does it pass constitutional muster? The answer is because the people that are there that swear the oath to it don't know what it says. So they say that they're protecting it and protecting your rights and all that stuff, but they don't know what the heck they're doing anyway.
Have no clue. That is incredible, which is why stuff gets struck down constantly. So this actually, this arguably is also a taxpayer savings because that is inevitably going to go to the courts, and the state's going to spend a fortune fighting it. Only for the Supreme, it may only go as far as a circuit court and turn down from appeal by the Supreme Court, or it might make it all the way to the Supreme Court. But at some point, that is going to not pass muster in front of a court, and however many hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars will be spent by the Tennessee
Right.
taxpayer fighting it in the meantime. What a
Right.
bunch of nonsense.
Yeah. Nashville has already passed an ordinance banning the use of facial recognition technology
Yep.
for
Yep.
Nashville police, or I guess Metro Police. So that's a big step in the right direction. Obviously, it sends a signal to the legislature in theory that, even the left cities that you would think are the ones that want to track everybody everywhere they go. Those they're willing to. They're not trying to track everybody. So hopefully, the Republican legislature will be responsive to it, because honestly, so I've got the same sponsor in the House on both of those bills, but that particular sponsor has a handful of things that are going to be fights, and he wants us to move the outright ban to another sponsor. So it's something that I'm trying to do is locate another sponsor. I've literally talked to at least 15, maybe more like 20 different Republicans in the House, asking them if they would like to sponsor that bill. And nobody wants to do it. Everybody shying away from it for a number of different reasons.
It's wrong thing. It sounds like we may have to do some kind of social media call to action, call out some of the especially Republican members of the state legislature, and say, hey, you know that the Constitution thing that you guys talk a lot about, it's in a lot of your in the background of a lot of your Facebook cover photos. Turns out if you read it, go far enough down about the Fourth Amendment, you're going to find that this thing doesn't pass that. And maybe you should change that. So we should probably work on that as a call to action in the near future. Yeah, I actually remember a time when the progressive left was against the government spying on you, but that was decades
I kind of
ago.
feel like more and more, I kind of feel like you have one party that is really devoted to the welfare state, and
Yes.
one party that is really devoted to the police state.
Yes.
And that's why we never shrink, is because whichever one you've got in charge is the one that's taking its opportunity to grow its particular brand.
And it also seems like whoever's in charge really starts to make peace with the police state, no matter how they felt initially. It's like, wait a second, oh, we can use this for all our stuff. Yes, actually, I like the police state. So that brings us to this last one, which is a professional privilege tax, which just sounds like exactly what I expected to be. Tell us about this and what you guys are trying to do here.
so I don't know, 5 years back, Tennessee actually passed a constitutional amendment banning an income tax. So it's part of the Constitution now. And this particular tax is left from that period of time, and it is a tax because you work in one of 7 professions: physician, lawyer, lobbyist, a handful of other, a securities broker, things like that. You literally just pay a $400 tax or $600 tax. I think it's 400.
It says 400 here. Yeah.
So, but you pay that $400 tax simply because your job title is what it is. And, that's separate from any licensing that you would have to have as a physician, for example, or, bar requirements for a lawyer or any of those different things. So, it's not licensure. It's not anything. It's simply a tax because you have a particular job. So this is the other bill that passed everything last year, and is waiting to get financed as well.
You got to fund it.
Got to fund it. And I think
that $400 times all those people
correct.
Ruin the Tennessee budget if it's not fully funded. I love it. So this is not licensing. This is just straight up. It's a great profession you have here. Be a shame if something were to happen to it. That'll be $400.
Right. No, that's exactly what it is. But that bill will eliminate 6 of 7 of the
Okay.
positions. The one that it won't is the securities broker thing, and the what I've been told is the logic behind that is a lot of people from out of state have to register because they're able to sell securities and they're licensed to sell securities in Tennessee. And this is the only way that the state would have to locate these people that operate in our state. And they're also taking money out of the state and they're not getting taxed for it because we don't have an income tax.
Right. So what will likely happen is if this passes, then it will carve that out for everyone except them, and then
Right.
they'll successfully be able to sue because they're being discriminated against. But that's that's for someone else.
That sounds like a problem for them and not me.
That's a them problem.
Yeah,
That's
for
not
sure.
a y'all problem. I said there are two kinds of problems. There's a me problem and there's a y'all problem. And that is solidly a y'all problem. No, I love it. But that's the foot in the door. Once you've said that, this violates the Constitution, then that means it always violates the Constitution. So these are the 8 main subjects that you are working on. These are things that your membership essentially voted on or polled on. These all polled the highest, and your membership is able to choose how many, all but one, only one of them they can choose, whichever ones up to and including all of them that they can financially support. So each thing is earmarked.
Right.
You are already working on all of these things. They're all at various levels of being pushed through the legislature or reworked or whatever they are. So this brings us to the final question here. Actually, 2 questions. One of them came in the comments a long time ago, and I forget who it was, but they asked, "Do you use the same stylist as Ted Cruz?"
Ow.
Right. That's what I said.
If I had feelings, that probably would. But as somebody that has to go and have conversations with sitting state senators about how they don't know anything about the Constitution and keep a straight face, no, I don't.
You feel nothing.
I don't. Is same stylist.
Listen, first of all, you look fantastic. So whoever said that's probably jealous. First of all, second of
I'm
all,
not wearing anything on the bottom.
what's that?
I'm not wearing anything on the bottom.
Well, there you go. Exactly. No. You listen. You look great. And second of all, like you said, this doesn't bother you because you're a soulless lobbyist, so it's not like you feel anything anyway, right? So, but here's the real question, which is if someone is hearing all of this and saying, "I want to get involved. I want to be a part of this. I want to be, helping donate to this cause and tell people about it and get involved. I want to be able to vote in future sessions on the things that you're working on. I want to be a part of For All Tennessee." How can they get in touch with you? How can they find out more? How can they get involved?
4alltn.org is the website. For All Tennessee on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. You can reach out to us through the website. There's a info@foralltn.org email that you can one click and send a message to, and that actually comes right to both mine and my executive director Josh Eccles' phone. So we'll see it, and you'll know if we're ignoring you because I just told you that we see it. But the big push right now is lobbying, of course, because it's that season. So we're definitely looking for people that would like to come to the Hill and meet their legislators and I tell them that they should side with us on some of these issues. We need people that would like to come more often than that and help us divide this labor up, because 14 bills is a lot of work for sure. So if you'd like to come and give us a day a week on the Hill and help us move some of this stuff, that's a lot of help. If you're not in Tennessee, know that we are actually For All Incorporated legally. Tennessee is just the chapter. The idea is to get it off the ground here and move it to other states. So if you'd like to see a chapter of this in your state, that is A, entirely plausible, and B, it would be incredibly helpful if you helped us prove that we can be successful with it here in Tennessee. But aside from that, you got to understand about this organization is we designed this thing to facilitate the wishes and goals of the regular folks in this state, as far as a liberty oriented policy would go. So if you've got ideas, we want to hear about the ideas. I don't care if you're in Tennessee or not. If you've got ideas on policy, crypto is something that I know a scarce amount about, but I have a lot of desire to work a policy on. So if you're the crypto guy, help me out, because I've got ideas, but I have no idea how to shape them. So, we need big thoughts. We want these ideas. We need these ideas for reform. This year we put out somewhere around 30 different issues. And we ended up with a list of about 14 items. So say we get half of these items done, because that would be spectacular if we got 7 bills done out of 14. Okay. That means that next year we've got 7 plus the other ones that didn't get done. We need 20 or so more. And I would love to have the folks that are impacted by some of these laws bring it to our attention. That's how we got that bail bond bill about the probation thing. I had a bail bondsman call me up and say he felt guilty because he got to double dip in these particular situations, and it was a law that needed to be. That's a true story, and that turned into a conversation with a legislator, and the legislator says, "I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm happy to take it on, and I can write the legislation and get it fixed." And here we are with a bill trying to get it done. I mean, this is the way we want this to work. We mentioned being able to separate the dollars out and all that good stuff. The reason for that is because you can vote on ballots, but we also think you can vote with your dollars. I mean, imagine if you've got thousands of people in a state that are essentially throwing money at liberty-oriented issues that they think are important. And all of a sudden you get this like GoFundMe for good liberty policy ideas. And that's what we want to do. I mean, if we get $20,000 on ballot access in that one bucket, shoot, I can hire a lobbying firm to come out and put real pressure on folks. You know what I'm saying? Or we can get out in the districts and we can pay people to go door to door, and we can do all kinds of fun stuff, but we need you to throw the stuff behind what you believe in, put your money where your mouth is. But no, I appreciate the opportunity to be on the show, Spike. I'm not trying to keep you all night. I love you, and that.
Yes. Well, I'm the reason for this. I'm the entire reason this is even happening. Yes.
The heart's inspiration, I think, is what the Righteous Brothers called it. But it means a lot to put all this out there and put all this effort into it. Because I haven't taken a paycheck out of this organization in a year. No. We're trying to do this for the right reasons, and not just because we can get paid doing it, because ain't nobody getting paid to do this. But it means a lot when you put all that out there and people believe in what you're doing, and people want to see you succeed, and people try to help you succeed. And that's if we get that from people that believe in liberty, we can make a big dang difference, really big difference in this world.
You're already beginning to make a difference, and that's the thing. And that's not only do I believe in you, not only am I continuing to help with this, but as you know, you've been reached out to people from other states who've said, I want to do a for all Michigan, a for all California, a for all whatever, because I believe, proof of concept, get it out there and let this thing become a nationwide thing where, and someone mentioned in the comments, and I'm trying to see where it was, someone said, Brian Virgil, Virgili said, I hate the word lobbying. It sounds like corruption. And that's the problem. Lobbying was supposed to be exactly what you're doing. Just individual people and groups of people lobbying their legislators
Right.
to do the right thing and to not do the
Right.
wrong thing. And it's turned into this, entire industry because of their ability to print money out of thin air and tax us whenever they want to. But this is actually what lobbying was supposed to be. Lobbying is supposed to be getting rid of a stupid policy that results in someone, talking about this one of the more minor things we talked about tonight, which was that, the double dipping and the getting arrested twice. Think of the hundreds of people that won't lose their jobs as a
Right.
result of, or have their lives in jeopardy, won't have their lifestyles in jeopardy because of that one relatively minor change on how things are done. And that can be replicated over and over again in Tennessee and across the country. And I think it's incredible what you're doing.
Yeah. If I may, I had this thought earlier that I wrote down because I thought it was actually a cool thought, and I never do scripts or anything, but I would like to share this thought.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
The problem with the political environment that we have right now is it's a control system, and that control system doesn't want to be threatened. So, we vote in people that say that they want to, be there for the people, and they want to take America back and all these fun things. But the reality is no one that has that power wants to give it up, or if there is somebody that has that power to make law and make decisions and all these different things, they are in such a small minority, they can't have any impact. I mean, look at the Ron Pauls of the world. So, but we have, so we, the people, have to demand something different, and we can't do that through either of the two parties or even through the Libertarian Party, because they're going to reject the idea of power diminishing from the party that has control. So the only way to fix what is broken in this country is to create some sort of separate parallel structure to what the party system looks like, where it's just a bunch of people coming together around stuff that they think is important to them and applying pressure to their legislators outside of the party itself. The parties divide us into two right off the bat. So if you're a Republican or a Democrat and you don't like something the Republicans or Democrats are doing, that doesn't mean that you're going to go and vote for the other party. That means you're going to complain, and then you're going to take what you're being fed, and you're going to hope that you don't get fed that same pile of poo next time, Yeah, exactly. That's the problem with how we operate right now. And the biggest thing that For All is trying to accomplish is to unifying people around principles and trying to diminish the power of personality and partisanship in this country, because if we cannot find a way to do that, we are lost. I mean, it's really as simple as that. Parties aren't doing
absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you're doing. You're 100% correct. We need to unify people around ideas and solutions instead of politicians and parties. And yes, that even includes, the Libertarian Party, which of course never has any kind of infighting or challenges like that. But in the meantime, it needs to be about the solutions. It's not about partisanship. It's not about, do you like this person or this person or this party or this party? It's, is this going well? And if not, would this be a better way to do it? And if so, let's work together on this thing. And then maybe we agree on this thing as well, and this thing and this thing, but let's work on this thing and get this thing fixed. So I love what you're doing. I love you. I love Joshua. I love everyone at For All Tennessee. Everyone, foralltn.org. Go get involved with them. They're the For All Tennessee on Facebook, at For All TN on Twitter. Reach out to them. They promise not to leave you on red if you message them. That feeling when they leave you on red, but they will definitely get back to you, and we can definitely do a lot of work through For All Tennessee. I completely endorse the stuff that they are doing. I think they're fantastic, and not just because this was all my idea. Not just even if it wasn't, even if they had already done this and it wasn't all brought together by my existence, I would still be saying all this. Justin, thank you again for coming on, and and stick around. We're going to talk during the intro. But folks, thank you for joining us for this fantastic first episode of 2022 of My Fellow Americans. Be sure to join us tomorrow on Thursday at 8 p.m. on the Writer's Block, where my co-host Matt Wright is going to be interviewing Alex Snitker, who is a former Libertarian Senate candidate in Florida. He was also the executive director of the Republican Liberty Caucus, and he has some words for you people about the Liberty Movement and what he thinks about it. And you're going to be hearing from him. It's basically going to be a large airing of grievances from Alex Snitker, who also has his own show. You're going to love it. Go watch it. I'm going to tune in because it's going to be... Wait a second. Today's Friday. Alex Snitker happened yesterday. I'm so used to the show being on Wednesday. Go watch yesterday's episode of the Writer's Block because that already happened.
You said Wednesday in the intro, and I messaged on the Twitter if you said it.
As soon as I said I'm going to tune in, I remembered that I did. And that this whole thing, COVID doesn't cause ongoing issues with fatigue. Anyway, so I hope you tuned in for that. If you don't, go and check it out. Tomorrow, which is Saturday, join me in, if you live anywhere near the Charleston area, the Awanda or Charleston area of South Carolina, come join me tomorrow. I will be at Middleton and Maker Barbecue at Awanda, South Carolina. If you follow my social media, you have definitely heard about Elliot Middleton, a man who has helped nearly 100 families get into vehicles and get back on the road in a place that has no public transportation. So having a car is the difference between being able to participate with the rest of society or not. And we are going down there. Me and the rest of the South Carolina Libertarian Party are going there to help raise funds and awareness for the Middleton Village to Village Foundation. I get to meet Elliot for the first time in person finally and help raise funds for them and help raise awareness. Come join me. It's my first in-person event of 2022. And then next week, join us right back here next Tuesday for the Muddy Waters of Freedom, where Matt Wright and I parse through the week's events like the sweet little chipper middle-aged men who are still recovering from COVID that we are. And then join me back here next week, Wednesday, Wednesday, usual spiked place and time, different than this week, but Wednesday for the next exciting episode of My Fellow Americans. I can't wait to see you then. Guys, I love you. Thank you for tuning in. I will see you very soon. I'm Spike Cohen, and you are the power. God bless, guys.
They say about an eye for an eye in a time when the blind lead the blind. Who am I to deny I would cry when a loved one dies? I recognize that body outside, bullet holes in the body that was alive. Now confined with chalk outline. Find out how, but you never know why. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. It ain't even make it to the news at 9. That's my sister, mother, father, brother, son. That's one of mine. All these years I close my eyes, open up to only find I'm in line. There's a pointless murder happening all the time. Either lose your life or mine. Caught up in them versus I. That ain't how it started, nah. How were we supposed to survive? There's a war going on outside.